take a nap, or relax. I'm just reading, and you, you can just listen or not. Why is it so hard to change? Imagine your mother loved to suffer, and through long observation, you unconsciously saw that this behavior pattern enabled her to get what she wanted in life. Let's also say that you've had a few tough experiences in your own life, which created quite a bit of suffering for you. Those memories still elicit an emotional reaction centered around a specific person at particular places and a specific time in your life. You've thought about the past often enough. Somehow, those memories are easy to recall, even automatic. Now imagine for more than 20 years, you've practiced feeling and thinking about suffering. Actually, you no longer need to think about the past event to create the feeling. You can't seem to think or act another way than how you always feel. You memorized suffering by your reoccurring thoughts and feelings, those related to that incident, as well as other events in your life. Your thoughts about yourself and your life tend to be colored by feelings of victimization and self-pity. Repeating the same thoughts and feelings you've courted for more than 20 years has conditioned your body to remember the feeling of suffering without much conscious thought. This seems so natural and normal now. It's who you are. And anytime you try to change anything about yourself, like the road turns back on you. You're right back to your old self. What most people don't know is that when they think about a highly charged emotional experience, they make the brain fire that exact sequence and pattern as before. They are firing and wiring their brain to the past by reinforcing those circuits into more hardwired networks. They also duplicate the same chemical in the brain and body in varying degrees, as if we're experiencing the event again in that moment. Those chemicals begin to train the body to further memorize that emotion. Both the chemical results of thinking and feeling and thinking, as well as neurons firing and wiring together, condition the mind and the body into an infinite set of automatic programs. We are capable of reliving a past event over and over, perhaps thousands of times in one lifetime. It is this unconscious repetition that trains the body to remember that emotional state equal to or better than the conscious mind does. That is, when the body is the mind. That's called a habit. Psychologist tells us by the time we are in our mid-30s, our identity or personality will completely form. This means that those of us over 35, we have memorized a select set of behaviors, attitudes, beliefs, emotions, reactions, habits, skills, associative memories, conditions, responses, and perceptions that are now subconsciously reprogrammed within us. Those programs are running us because the body has become the mind. This means that we will think the same thoughts, feel the same feelings, react in the same identical ways, behave in the same manner, believe the same dogmas, and perceive reality the same way. About 95% of who we are by midlife is a series of subconscious programs that have become automatic. Driving a car, brushing our teeth, overreacting when we're stressed, worrying about our future, judging our friends, complaining about our lives, blaming our parents, not believing in ourselves, and insisting on being chronically unhappy, just to name the few. I don't like this upbeat stuff. This upbeat piano music. I like I like to listen to like quiet piano music when I'm reading. You know, like I like to listen to quiet piano music. Like play me something that's gonna make me feel like I'm reading in a library inside the Harry Potter. You know, I want to feel like I'm reading in a library on in Harry Potter. I'm like at Hogwarts reading in the library, reading about quantum physics. You know, I like to take myself places. All right, where was we? Often we only appear to be awake. Since the body becomes the subconscious mind, it's easy to see that in situations when the body becomes the mind, the conscious mind no longer has much to do with our behavior. The instant we have a thought, feeling, or reaction, the body runs on automatic pilot. We go unconscious. Take, for example, a mother driving a minivan to drop her kids off at work. How is she able to navigate traffic, break arguments, drink her coffee, shift gears, and help her son blow his nose all at once? Much like a computer program, these actions have become automatic functions that can run very fluidly and easily. Mom's body is skillfully doing everything because it has memorized how to do all these deeds through much repetition. She no longer has any conscious thought about how she does them. They are habitual. Think about that. 5% of the mind is conscious, struggling against the 95% that is running subconscious automatic programs. We've memorized a set of behaviors so well that we have become an automatic habitual body mind. In fact, when the body has memorized a thought, action, or feelings to the extent that the body is the mind, when the mind and the body are one, we are in a state of being, the memory of ourselves. And if 95% of who we are by the age of 35 is a set of involuntary programs, memorized behaviors, and habitual emotions, reactions, it follows that 95% of our day, we are unconscious. We only appear to be awake. Yikes. So a person may consciously want to be happy, healthy, or free, but the experience of hosting 20 years of suffering and the repeated cycling of those chemicals of pain and pity have subconsciously conditioned the body to be in habitual state. We live by habitat. When we are no longer aware of what we're thinking, doing, or feeling, we become unconscious. The greatest habits we must break is the habit of being ourselves. Here are some practical illustrations of the body being in a habitual state. Have you ever tried being unable to consciously remember a phone number? Try as you may, you can't even recall 3 digits out of the string of numbers required to make the call. And yet you can pick the phone up and watch as your fingers dial the number. Your conscious thinking brain can't remember the number, but you've practiced this action so many times with your fingers that your body now knows and remembers better than your brain. That example was for those of us who grew up before speed dial or cell phones came along. Perhaps you've had the same experience with typing in your PIN into your ATM or entering your password online. Similarly, I can recall the time when I worked out at the gym and had a locker with a combination, and I was so tired. After the workout, I couldn't remember the combination. I stared at the dial, trying to recall the sequence of 3 numbers, and they wouldn't surface. However, when I started to twirl the dial, the combination would come back to me almost as if by magic. Again, this happened because we practiced something so many times that our bodies know better than our conscious mind. The body, subconsciously, has become the mind. Remember that 95% of who we are by 35 sits in the same subconscious memory state in which the body automatically runs set of behaviors and emotional reactions. In other words, the body is running the show, not the mind. In truth, Why the servant becomes the master, when the servant becomes the master. In truth, the body is the servant of the mind. It follows that the body has become the mind. The servant has become the master, and the former master, the conscious mind, has gone to sleep. The mind might think it's still in charge, but the body is influencing decisions equal to its memorized emotions. Now, let's say the mind wants to get back in control. What do you think the body is going to say? Where have you been? Go back to sleep. I've got it together. You don't have the will, the persistence, or the awareness to do what I have been doing all this time while you were unconsciously following my orders. I even modified my receptor sites over the years in order to serve you better. Your thoughts were running. Your thoughts were running things. While I have been influencing you all along and urging you to make all of your decisions equal to what you feel right and familiar. I had that same experience when I was dealing with lucid dreaming because it was like a constant fight. It was a constant fight with my subconscious and my conscious when I was trying to tell myself I'm dreaming. When I was trying to become conscious in my dreams, it only would happen like it felt like 2 seconds before I got up, before my body woke up. It was like soon as I realized that I was conscious, that I realized that what's happening to me is I'm in a dream, and I started to try to control the dream. My subconscious took over. My subconscious was telling me to go back to sleep. I've got it together. You don't have the will or the persistence to be aware to do what I have been doing. And when the 5% that is conscious is going against 95% that is running subconscious automatic programs, the 95% is so reflexive that it only takes one stray thought or single stimulus from the environment to turn on an automatic program again. Then we're back to the same old, thinking the same thoughts, performing the same actions, but expecting something different to happen in our lives. When we try to regain control, this is when the body signals the brain to begin taking us out of our conscious goals. Our internal chatter comes up with a battery of reason why we should not attempt to do anything out of the ordinary, not break out of the habituated states of being that we're used to. It will pick up all of our weaknesses, which it knows and fosters, and hurls them at us one by one. And that's basically what happens when you're fasting. When you're fasting, you're not eating, and your body is trying to send you signals and like throwing up and hurling, you need to eat, because it's so used to that. But you tell your body it's okay. You can slow down. You have time to heal. You have time to like fix whatever needs to be fixed inside of us. You don't have to run the same program today. The book that I'm reading is called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. It's a quantum physics book that is helping the mind and helping you figure out how you're wired. We are way more powerful than we know, and we allow ourselves to be. So, in order to find that power and understand that power, you have to educate yourself. Be willing to slow down and read books like this that are about quantum physics. And I'm actually interested in it. So I didn't know if anybody, for me, I'm just going live and just reading. And if anybody wants to listen, they can, and just relax and have it play on their TV or on their phone. If they want to take a nap, if they want to just meditate. The book is called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. We create worst case scenarios in our minds so that we don't have to rise above these familiar feelings. Because when we try to break the internal chemical order we have made, so second nature, the body goes into chaos. Its internal badgering feels nearly irresistible, and plenty of time we succumb. insert into the subconscious to change it. Okay, hopefully this helps me with my lucid dreaming. The subconscious mind only knows what you have programmed it to do. Have you ever been trying, have you ever been typing along on your laptop and all of a sudden your computer starts running automatic programs that you have no control over? When you try to use the conscious mind to stop the automatic subconscious programs stored in your body, it's like yelling at the computer that's gone rogue, with several programs running while windows are popping up and showing more than you can handle. Hey, stop. The computer isn't even going to register that. It's going to keep doing what it's doing until some sort of intervention, until you get into its operating system and change some settings. So let's change some settings inside of our brain to lucid dream, because I'm ready. I'm tired of this feel like 30 seconds and then I'm getting up. In this book, you will learn how to get into the subconscious and reprogram it with a new set of strategies in effect. You have to deprogram or unwire your old thinking and feeling patterns, and then reprogram or wire your brain with new patterns of thinking and feelings based on who you want to be instead. When you condition the body with a new mind, the two can no longer work in opposition, but must be in harmony. This is the point of change, of self creation. Guilty until proven innocent. Let us use a real life situation to illustrate what happens when we decide to break from some memorized emotional state and change our minds. I think we can all relate to one common state of being: guilt. So I'm going to use that to illustrate into practical terms how this cycle of thinking and feeling works against us. Then we'll identify some of the efforts the brain body system is going to make to remain in control and perceive that negative state of being. Imagine that you frequently feel guilty about one thing or another. If something goes wrong in a relationship, a simple miscommunication, someone unreasonably misplacing his or her anger on you, or whatever, you wind up taking the blame. Feeling bad. Picture yourself as one of those people who repeatedly say or think, "It was my fault." After 20 years of "it was my fault," you feel guilty and think guilty thoughts automatically. You have created an environment of guilt for yourself. Other factors have contributed to this, but for now, let's stay with the notion of how your thinking and feeling have created your state of being in your environment. Every time you think a guilty thought, you signaled your body to produce specific chemicals that make up feelings of guilt. You've done this so often that your cells are swimming in a sea of guilt chemicals. Man, that that definitely sounds a little bit like me. um, the receptor sites on your cells adapt so that they can better take and process this particular chemical expression, that of guilt. The enormous amount of guilt bathing the cells begins to feel normal then to them. Oh my God, this is literally like the same thing that happens to us on an external level. Because what happens to us on an external level is that what we feeling and what we like, our habits and how we vibrate, it creates our reality. It creates what we attract to us. And our environment continues to evolve when it's in a when your mind is in an evolutionary state of goodness for yourself. But if there's programs that's running that's causing restrictions and limitations on your life is going to be stagnant. You're going to feel like everything is going slow. So this term goes from as above, so below, as within, so without. Where was I at? Okay, here we go. It's like living for years near an airport. You get so used to the noise that you no longer hear it constantly, unless one jet flies lower than usual and the roar of its engines is so much louder that it gets your attention. The same thing happens to your cells. As a result, they literally become desensitized to the chemical feelings of guilt. Oh, so it's kind of like when you smoke tree. And when you start using it too much, it starts to become numb to you. So you need a stronger, dosage. You need to, get the tree more. Okay. They will require a stronger, more powerful emotion from you, a higher threshold of stimuli to turn on the next time. And when that strong hit of guilt chemicals gets the body's attention, your cells perk up at the stimulation, much like your first cup of java feels to a coffee drinker. And when each cell divides at the end of its life and makes a daughter cell, the receptor sites on the outside of the new cell will require a higher threshold of guilt to turn them on. Oh, shoot. So when a cell dies and it creates a daughter cell, that cell passes down the same program, the same chemical program, but in a stronger way to the new cell to hopefully make sure the cell, stays alive better. Because it's so numb, the cell has become so numb to the chemical that's being fed, it needs a stronger one. So it creates a stronger one. And then that stronger one creates another stronger one. And it creates a loop. The receptors on the site the receptor sites on the outside of the new cell will require a higher threshold of guilt to turn them on. Now the body demands a stronger emotional rush of feeling bad in order to feel alive. You will become addicted to the guilt by your own doing. Whew. And then you attract more of those situations that make you feel guilty, which is what you're universally you're talking to the universe with your vibration, and your vibration is giving off guilt. And if the guilt that you vibrating on, your body is creating more of that, you're just always going to want more, and it's going to eat you alive. When anything goes wrong or is an orrery in your life, you automatically assume that you're the guilty party. But then that seems normal to you now. You don't even need to think about feeling guilty. You just are that way. Not only is your mind not conscious of how you're expressing your guilty state by the way of thinking you say and do, but your body wants to feel its accustomed level of guilt because that's what you have trained it to do. You have become unconsciously guilty most of the time. Your body has become the mind of guilt. Only when, say, a friend points out that you need to have a only when, say, a friend points out that you needn't have apologized to the store clerk for giving you the wrong change. Oh my God, I used to do that a lot. I used to say, I'm sorry, my bad. Just like in just minimal situations that I didn't really need to say sorry for giving you the wrong change. Do you realize how pervasive this aspect of your personality has become? Let's say that this triggers one of those moments of enlightenment, an epiphany, and you think, she's right. Why do I always apologize all the time? Why do I take responsibility for everyone else's missteps? After you reflect on your history of constantly pleading guilty, you say to yourself, today, I'm going to stop blaming myself and making excuses for others people's bad behavior. I'm going to change. Because of your decisions, you're no longer going to think the same thoughts that produce the same feelings and vice versa. And if you falter, you've made a deal with yourself that you're going to stop and remember your intention. 2 hours go by and you feel really good about yourself. You think, wow, this is actually working. Unfortunately, unfortunately, to pause, we are reading right now. And if you guys want to take a nap, if you want to just put the phone down or just hear the reading, that's what's going on right now in this live. And I'm just doing it because I'm reading. And if y'all want to be in it, then I'm here. This is just for you to relax and for me to relax, to regulate yourself. For those now joining, scroll up in the chat. for the book title. Yes, I probably should put the book title in. But I just want y'all to feel good and just feel relaxed and feel calm, just listening to something and focusing in on something. I needed that for myself today and right now. I just want to focus in on one thing and allow the rest of the world and the rest of how the scenes play in the rest of the day to have freedom in the universe to create its own way without me trying to control stuff. You should definitely save the live. Really? I don't know. I don't know if people, I mean, there I go. If people will like it. But regardless, I'll save it and see what happens. Unfortunately, your body's cells aren't feeling so good, right? Because you told yourself that you're going to stop eating. You told yourself that you're going to stop saying sorry, you're going to stop feeling guilty for yourself. But the way your cells are programmed, they aren't feeling good. Over the years, you trained them to demand. Over the years, okay, you've trained them to demand more molecules of emotion, guilt in this case, in order to fulfill their physical needs, their chemical needs. You have trained your body to live as memorized chemicals. You've trained your body to live as a memorized chemical community, but now you're interrupting that, denying its chemical needs and going contrary to its subconscious programs. The body becomes addicted to guilt or any emotion in the same way that it would get addicted to drugs. At first, you only need a little of emotion, little of the emotion slash drug in order to feel it. Then your body becomes desensitized, and your cells require more and more of it just to feel that same again. Trying to change your emotional patterns is like going through drug withdrawal. Once your cells are no longer getting the usual signals from the brain about feeling guilty, they begin to express concern. Before the body and the mind were working together to produce this state of being called guilt. Now you are no longer thinking and feeling and thinking in the same way. Your intentions is to produce more positive thoughts, but the body is still revving up to produce feelings of guilt based on guilty thoughts. Think of this as a kind of highly specialized assembly line. Your brain has programmed the body to expect one part that will fit into this largely. All of a sudden, you've sent another part that doesn't fit into the space where the old guilty part once did. An alarm goes off and the whole operation comes to a standstill. Your cells are always spying on what's happening in the brain and in the mind. Your body is the best mind reader ever. So they all stop. And what are they doing? Looking upward towards the brain and think, what are you doing up there? You insisted on being guilty and were loyally following your commands for years. We subconsciously memorized programs of guilt from your repetitive thoughts and feelings. We change our receptor sites to reflect your mind, modify our chemistry so that you can automatically feel guilty. We have maintained your internal chemical order, independent of any external circumstances in your life. We are so used to the same chemical order that your new state of being feels uncomfortable and unfamiliar. We want the familiar, the predictable, and what feels natural. All of a sudden, you're gonna change? We can't have that. So the cells huddle up. This is when the cells try to work against you. This is when your body, your mind, your programs working against you, even though you the one who programmed it. You the one who said and did all of this. And now you want to change. And your body not going for it right now. So the cells huddle up and they say, let's send a protest message to the brain. But we have to be sneaky because we want her to think that she's actually responsible for these thoughts. We don't want her to know they came from us. So now the cells send a message marked urgent right up to the spinal cord, to the surface of the thinking brain. I call this fast tracked because the message goes straight up to the central nervous system in a matter of seconds. At the same time this is happening, the chemistry of the body, the chemistry of guilt, is now at a lower level because you're not thinking and feeling the same way. But this drop does not go unnoticed. A thermostat in the brain called the hypothalamus also sends out an alarm that says chemicals values are going down. We've got to make more. So the hypothalamus signals the thinking brain to revert back to its old habitual ways. This is the slow track because it takes longer for the chemicals to circulate through the bloodstream. The body wants you to return to your memorized chemical state. So it influences you to think in familiar routines. So it activates corresponding networks and neurons that have fired and wired for years, which are equal to the mind of that feeling. These fast track and slow track cellular responses occur simultaneously, and the next thing you know, you start to hear the chatter of your thoughts like these in your head. You're too tired today. You can start tomorrow. Tomorrow's a better day. Really, you can do it later. And my favorite, this doesn't feel right. Your mind starts to think and have these thoughts of, let's just start tomorrow. We'll start later. If that doesn't work, a second sneak attack occurs. The body mind wants to be in control again, so it starts picking on you a bit. It's okay for you to feel a little bit bad, right? It's your father's fault. Don't feel bad about what you did in your past. In fact, let's take a look at your past so we can remember why you are this way. Look at you. You're a mess, a loser. You're pathetic and weak. Your life is a failure. You'll never change. You're too much like your mother. Why don't you just quit? As you continue this awfulizing, the body is tempting the mind to return to the state it has unconsciously memorized. On a rational level, this is absurd. But obviously, on some level, it feels good to feel bad. The moment we listen to those subvocalizations, believe those thoughts, and respond by feeling the same familiar feeling, mental amnesia sets in and we forget about our original aim. The funny thing is, we actually begin to believe what the body is telling us. We immerse ourselves back into the automatic program and return to being our old self. Most of us can relate to this little scenario. It's no different from any habit we've tried to break. Whether we're addicted to cigarettes, chocolate, alcohol, shopping, gambling, or biting our nails, the moment we cease these habitual actions, chaos rages between the body and the mind. I had this same experience when I got up today because I wanted to get up and record and edit and be able to upload before 1 p.m. And I was trying to get up and it took me like an hour. It took me like an hour and 2 minutes to like get up. Like my body was not having it. Like just go back to sleep. Like you got 30 minutes. Like you could just try to rush it. Like your body, your mind, it's not even you talking. It's not you consciously acting on the action that you said you were going to do. It's your body telling you what to do. And that mm-mm. Right? Okay. So the thoughts we embrace are intimately identified with the feelings of what it would be like to experience an indulgence. When we give into our cravings, we keep producing the same outcomes in our lives because the mind and the body are in opposition. Our thoughts and feelings are working against each other, and if the body has become the mind, we will always fall prey to how they feel. As long as we use familiar feelings as barometers and feedback on our efforts to change, we will always try to talk ourselves out of the new possibilities. We will never be able to think greater than our internal environment. We will never be able to see a world of possible outcomes other than the negative ones from our past. Our thoughts and feelings have that much power over us. All right, here we go. Help is only a thought away. The next step in breaking the habit of being ourselves is understanding how important it is to get the mind and body to working together and to break the chemical continuity of our guilty, ashamed, angry, depressed states of being. Resisting the body's demand to restore that old, unhealthy order isn't easy, but help is on the way. You will learn that in the following pages that for true change to occur, it is essential to unmemorize an emotion that has become a part of your personality, and then to recondition the body to a new mind. It's easy to feel hopeless when we realize that the chemistry of our emotions has habituated our bodies to a state of being that is too often a product of anger, jealousy, resentment, and sadness, and so forth. After all, I've said this for these programs, these propensities and programmed into our subconscious. The good news is that we can become consciously aware of these tendencies. I'll deal more with this concept in the pages ahead. For now, I hope you can accept that to change your personality, you need to change your state of being, which is intimately connected to feelings that you've memorized. Just as negative emotions can become embedded in operating systems of your subconscious, so can positive ones. So, I've been dealing with trying to get up early, wanting to get up early, and telling myself I'm going to get up early, but then I end up sleeping in an hour later. And that's because my body is fighting my mind. And I don't be realizing that in the moment. You know, you just really trying to fight, really. And I would do these tricks where I would trick my mind or like try to ease my mind into this new program, into this new habit. Forcing it is that's like, activating your masculine energy. But if you want to, you can do that. You can force yourself to get up every single day. But for me, I'm trying to like really balance that out with my feminine and masculine energy. So I've been setting my alarm clock an hour early than I said I was going to get up. So I I would set my alarm clock for 6 a.m. and then I'll get up and I'll be like, tell my body, let's go to sleep, let's take another nap. Get back up at 7. Let's go to sleep. And then when I actually want to get up at 8 o'clock, I'll feel like, I got enough sleep, or I tricked my body and my brain into realizing that we overslept. All right, here we go. By itself, conscious positive thinking cannot overcome subconscious negative feelings. Ooh, what? Conscious positive thinking cannot overcome subconscious negative feelings. At one time or another, we've all consciously declared, I want to be happy. But until the body is instructed otherwise, it's going to continue to express these programs of guilt, sadness, or anxiety. The conscious intellectual mind may reason that it may want joy, but the body has been programmed to feel otherwise for years. We stand on a soapbox proclaiming change to be our best interests, but on a visceral level, we cannot seem to bring up that feeling of true happiness. That's because mind and body aren't working together. The conscious mind wants one thing, but the body wants another. If you've been devoted to feeling negatively for years, those feelings have created an automatic state of being. We could say that you are subconsciously unhappy, right? Your body has been conditioned to be negative. It knows how to be unhappy better than your conscious mind knows otherwise. You don't even have to think about how to be negative. You just know that it's how you are. How can your conscious mind control this attitude in the subconscious body mind? Some maintain the positive thinking is an answer. I want to be clear that by itself, positive thinking never works. Many so called positive thinkers have felt negative most of their lives, and now they're trying to think positively. They are in a polarized state, which they are trying to think one way in order to override how they feel inside. They consciously think one way, but they are being the opposite. When the mind and body are in opposition, change will never happen. I can say that that's true for me. Even when I was going through my journey and like understanding the power of the tongue, and I was making sure that I wasn't speaking any negative things, when negative thoughts would come up or negative feelings resurfaced, I would stuff it down by trying to, I would think that I'm transmuting it in a positive way when actually I'm really just stuffing it down. And it just keeps coming up. Okay. Memorized feelings limit us to recreate the past. Memorized feelings limit us to recreating the past. By definition, emotions are the end product of past experiences in life. When you're in the midst of an experience, the brain receives vital information from the external environment through 5 different sensory pathways: sight, smell, sound, taste, and touch. As the cumulative sensory data reaches the brain and is processed, networks of neurons arranging themselves into specific patterns reflecting the external event. The moment those nerve cells string into place, the brain releases chemicals. Those chemicals are called emotions or feelings. In this book, I use the word feelings and emotions interchangeably because they are close enough for our understanding. When those emotions begin to chemically flood your body, you detect a change in your internal order. You're thinking and feeling differently than you were moments before. Naturally, when you notice this change, your internal state, you'll pay attention to whoever or whatever in your external environment caused that change. When you can identify whatever it is in your outer world that caused your internal change, that event in itself is called a memory. Neurologically and chemically, you encode the environmental information into your brain and body. Thus, you can remember experiences better because you recall how they felt at the time they happened. Feelings and emotions are chemical recordings of past experiences. For example, your boss arrived for your performance review. You noticed immediately that he looks red faced, even irritated. As he starts speaking in a loud voice, you smell garlic on his breath. His acu- ac- he accuses you of undermining him in front of other employees, and he says he has passed you over for a promotion. In this moment, you feel jittery, weak in the knees and queasy, and your heart is racing. You feel fearful, betrayed, and angry. All of the cumulative sensory information, everything you're smelling, seeing, feeling, and hearing, is changing your internal state. You associate the external experience with the change in how you feel internally, and it brands you emotionally. You go home and repeatedly review this experience in your mind. Every time you do, you remind yourself of the accusing, intimidating look on your employer's face, how he yelled at you, what he said, even how he smelt. Then you once again feel fearful and angry. You produce the same chemistry in your brain and body as if the performance review is still happening. Because your body believes it is experiencing the same event again and again, you conditioning you're conditioning it to live in the past. Let's reason this a bit further. I can talk about that as well. When I was working, when I was working at CVS, my first day when I was there, it was only one other melanated person, woman there. Everybody else was, white. And I remember when I first was there and I was standing at the counter and I was bagging up the pills, the stuff. I was at the front counter checking people out, and this I was taking the order, and one of the co-workers, she walked over and she was putting bags on the thing to restock the bags. And while she was sitting there, she was listening to a conversation I was having with somebody about the vaccines, because you have to recommend the vaccines to the people. And I was talking to her. I was like, she was like, "No, I'm good. I don't want that. I'm trying to keep my children safe and their DNA safe." And I said, "Yeah, it's sad what's happening right now." And she walked the girl who was listening in on the conversation. She walked over and she whispered to everybody at the pill counting counter, and she was talking about, that girl over there was just talking about vaccines, and like she was just like talking about me, and I heard it, but I was the only melanated girl there that was clocked in at that point. And I didn't, it was my first time. I didn't want them to, you know, have look at me weird, and like I didn't want to come off as that attitudinal, black girl. Even though I don't consider myself black, I don't consider myself a color, but I didn't want to come off that way because I can see they don't really have much color in the environment. So I didn't say anything back. I didn't walk over there like I wanted to, and it just created this uncomfortable feeling that they was looking at me and judging my views, and I felt uncomfortable. And from that day on, every time I walked in, I felt like I was being judged. I felt like nobody liked me and nobody talked to me. Nobody actually communicated with me. It didn't feel like a friendly environment. Every time I walked in, my body would just, and my stomach would just drop because I really needed that. At that moment, I really needed some money and I didn't want to mess up this job. And even though I had my views, like I didn't want to work a job, but I was still trying to find my way. And my body, because of that situation and that memory of how everybody looked at me and was talking and whispering about me, I was so uncomfortable. Eventually, it got so uncomfortable to where the girl who was listening in on the conversation, she started just saying like rude stuff when, like, for example, we'll be sent on our breaks and we would have to go to the break room and eat our lunch. And she would, I would be called for a break and she would be called for a break at the same time. And she was like, I don't want to go on a break with them. And everybody would laugh. And then, the, um, the general manager, the person who like hired me, he was clocked in at that time, and he was like, "Hey, don't say that." And it was just a joke to them, but it made me really uncomfortable. It was just a bad environment, and my body was responding to it every single time I walked in. So that's how memories are created. When there's a change, when there's a drastic change in you, in your body chemistry, and it happens so fast that it causes a strike inside of you. Okay, you go home and repeatedly review this experience in your mind. Every time you do, you remind yourself of the accusing, intimidating look on your employer's face, how he yelled at you, what he said, how he smelled. Then you once again feel fearful and angry. You produce the same chemistry in your brain and body, and it performs, and as if the performance review is still happening. Because your body believes it's experiencing the same event, and again, you are conditioning it to live in the past. Let's reason this a bit further. Think of your body as the unconscious mind or as an objective servant that takes orders from your consciousness. It is so objective that it doesn't know the difference between the emotional emotions that are created from experiences in your external world and those you fabricate in your internal world by thought alone. To the body, they are the same. What if the cycle of thinking and feeling that you were betrayed continues for years on? If you kept dwelling on that experience with your boss or reliving these familiar feelings day in and day out, you continually signal your body with chemical feelings that associate with the past. This chemical community fools the body into believing that it's still re experiencing the past. So the body keeps reliving the same emotional experiences. When you memorize thoughts and feelings, consistently force your body to be in the past, we could say that the body becomes a memory of the past. If those memorized feelings of betrayal have been driving your thoughts for years, then your body has been living in the past 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. In time, your body is anchored into the past. And that causes a physical reaction. That's how people get diseases and sicknesses and their body just shuts down. For me, I feel like in these moments, like what I was talking about with when I was working at CVS in that environment, I had help. I felt like my higher self, what I feel like is when the guardian angels come by and help you in a certain way, I feel like it's your higher self coming down and trying to tell you that it's going to be all right. I remember when I felt so uncomfortable. I was already experiencing racism from the old people who would come through the drive-through to get their pills, but I was still again being uncomfortable. So I started listening to music to try to ease my mind and ease myself to feeling comfortable again. Just get through the 8 hours and go home and forget about it. And I put my phone on a playlist that I just randomly popped up on YouTube, and it was this song called "Speak" by Janae Aiko. And in this song, she was talking about it. It was, I think it went like, oh God. It's like it was talking about speaking from your heart and speaking from your chest and like speaking how you feel and don't be afraid. It's a good song, and it made me feel better. It made me feel comfortable in myself, and I didn't judge myself as much for not speaking up when I wanted to, because I didn't want to come off as the attitudinal black girl who just started, and I didn't want them to judge me even more. It was a really terrible environment. Um, and I have to, I had to deal with that part of myself. So yeah, sometimes you do get help from yourself. You do get help. Yourself, your higher self, even though the physical body is offering you challenges, you're never alone with what you're dealing with. You're always working to make it ease. Okay, let's get back to reading. You know that when you repeatedly recreate the same emotional feelings until you can't think any greater of how you feel, your feelings are now the means of your thinking. Um, I'm just, this is what I do when I'm reading my books. I try to do my best to connect with myself and connect with what's going on in the book so I can learn and understand what happened with me. You know that when you repeatedly recreate the same emotions until you cannot think any greater than how you feel, your feelings are now the means of your thinking. And since your feelings are a record of previous experiences, you're thinking in the past, and now by quantum law, you're creating more of the past. Bottom line, most of us live in the past and resist living in a new future. Why? The body is so habituated to memorizing the chemicals, records our past experiences, that it grows attached to these emotions. So when we want to look to the future and dream of new vistas and bold landscapes in our not too distant reality, the body whose currency is feeling, resisting the sudden change in direction. Accomplishing this about face is the great labor of personal change. So many people struggle to create new destiny, but find themselves unable to overcome the past memory of who they feel they are. Even we crave unknown adventures and dreams of new possibilities ahead in the future. We seem to be compelled to revisiting the past. Feelings and emotions are not that bad. They are the end product of experiences. But if we always relive the same one, we can't embrace new experiences. Have you known people who always seem to talk about the good old days? When they're really saying is, nothing new is happening in my life to stimulate my feelings. Therefore, I have to reaffirm myself from some glorious moments in the past. If we believe that our thoughts have something to do with our destiny as creators, most of us are only going in circles. That's true. Just living in circles for real. Controlling our inner environment. The genetic myth. Alright, so you about to get to some real physical stuff. So far, in discussing the quantum model of reality relates to change, I've spent most of the time talking about our emotions, the brain, and the body. We've seen the overcoming of reoccurring thoughts and feelings that the body memorizes is a must if we are to break the habit of being ourselves. Another major aspect of breaking these habits that have to do with our physical health, certainly in the hierarchy of things, that most of us want to change our lives. Health issues rank way up there. And when it comes to what we like to change about our health, there is one set of dogma that we are going to have to examine and dispel: the myth that genes create disease and the fallacy of genetic determinism. We will also look at scientific understanding that may be new to you called epigenetics, the control of genes from outside the cell, or more precisely, the study of changes in gene function that occur without a change in DNA sequence. Just as we can create new experiences for ourselves, like my daughter did, we can also gain control over very important parts of our lives when we commonly think as our genetic destiny. As we go along, you will see that knowing something about your genes and what signals them to be expressed or not is crucial to understanding why you have to change from the inside out. Scientific dictum used to declare that our genes were responsible for most diseases. Then, a couple of decades ago, the scientific community casually mentioned that there had been an error and announced that the environment, by activating or deactivating particular genes, is most causative is the most causative factor in producing disease. We now know that less than 5% of all disease today stems from single gene disorders such as Tay Sachs and Huntington's chorea, whereas around 95% of illnesses relate to lifestyle choices, chronic stress, and toxic factors in the environment. Yet, factors in our outer environment are only part of the picture. What explains why two people can be exposed to the same toxic environmental conditions for years and only get sick or for years. Oh, my bad. My brain was thinking as I was talking, but I'm trying to stay in this flow state of just reading. Um, Hold on. Let me make sure the piano music is still working. Because it says I've been reading for 55 minutes. Let's start over. Because I kind of like this one. It makes me feel like I'm reading. It makes me feel like I'm reading at Hogwarts right now. Like somewhere in a parallel dimension. Somewhere in a parallel dimension, I'm in Hogwarts and I'm reading. Reading about how to do magic. Here we go. Yet, the factors in the outer environment are only part of the picture. What explains when two people can be exposed to the same toxic environmental conditions for years and one gets sick or diseased while the other doesn't? How is it that when someone has multiple personality disorder, one personality can demonstrate several allergy to something while another person in the same body can be immune to the same antigen or stimulus? Why? When most healthcare providers are exposed to pathogens on a daily basis, aren't doctors and others in the medical community continually ill? There are also numerous cases studied documenting identical twins who share the same genes who have had very different experiences when it came to their health and longevity. For example, if both shared a family history of a particular disease, that illness often manifested in one twin but not the other. Same genes, different outcomes. In all these cases, could the person who remains healthy have such a coherent, balanced, vital internal order that even when his or her body is exposed to the same hazardous environment conditions, the external world does nothing to his or her gene expression? So does this signal the genes to create disease? It's true that the external environment influenced our internal environment. However, by changing our internal state of being, can we overcome the effect of stressful, toxic environment so that certain genes do not become activated? We may not be able to control all the conditions in our external environment, but we certainly have a choice in controlling our inner environment. Genes, memories of past environment. To explain how we can control our inner environment. I was reading a book that's called, what was it called? We Are Not the Same. And it was talking about how, I think her name is Shaniqua. It's a book by Shaniqua, and she was talking about how the melanin gene, the melanin in our bodies, for people who have melanin in their skin, our bodies are totally different from people who don't have melanin. And the fact that the health industry doesn't acknowledge that is on purpose to keep us unhealthy. Like some people can eat junk and meat and never get a disease in their entire life. But it's difficult for people who have melanin inside of their body because melanin is it absorbs like very very easily, just like the color black. The color black absorbs very very easily. The melanin absorbs whatever chemical and it gets highly addicted to it faster than people um who don't have melanin in their body. And she was talking about how when the way we eat in melanated households, with the unhealthiness of like the recipes and how like the the Thanksgiving food that we choose, like the choice of food, how we over season, how we do that. That's a genetic thing, because when our ancestors were given scraps or food that was very very old, they had to season it very very deeply to not to to help with the taste. We really aren't supposed to be seasoning our food that much, you know but we make it taste good. I ain't gonna lie, it tastes good. But is that the genes talking? Is that the activated genes talking? Or is it just epigenetics? So it's because of our environment where melanated people have sickle cell, or they get diabetes easily, or you know it's on purpose. The health industry has been doing this on purpose because they know the power of they've studied melanin. They've studied that. And I was watching this video of when people without melanin, when they put like sunscreen on, if you look at it through a UV camera or lens, it looks like they're putting on melanin. Like it looks like they're putting black, like melanin on their face and on their body. It looks dark. It looks really, really dark. Sunscreen looks really, really dark. But what we're talking about is the environment and how it affects our activating of our genes. Okay, genes, memories of the past environment. To explain how we can control our inner environment, I need to talk a bit about the nature of genes, which are expressed in the body when cells manufacture specific proteins, the building blocks of life. The body is a protein producing factory. Muscle cells makes muscles protein that are called actin and myosin. Skin cells make skin proteins called collagen and elastin. And stomach cells make stomach proteins called enzymes. Most of the cells of the body make proteins and genes that are way that that the way we make them. Oh, okay. Make proteins and genes are the way we make them. We express particular genes via certain cells making particular proteins. The way most organisms adapt to conditions in their environment is through gradual genetic modifications. For example, when an organism is faced with a tough environmental condition such as temperature extremes, dangerous predators, fast prey, destructive winds, strong currents, and so on, it is forced to overcome the adverse aspects of its world in order to survive. An organism record those experiences, and in the wiring of their brain and the emotions in their bodies, they will change over time. If lions are chasing prey that can outrun them, then by activating engaging the same experiences for generations, they will develop longer legs, sharper teeth, or bigger hearts. All of these changes are the result of genes making proteins that modify the body to adapt its environment. Let's say, with the animal world, to look at how this works in the terms of adaptation or in evolution. A hypothetical group of mammals migrate to an environment in which the temperature is raised from -15 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The genes of those mammals, over many generations living under extremely cold conditions, will eventually be triggered to produce a new protein, which will produce a thicker, greater amount of fur. Hair and fur are proteins. Numerous insect species have evolved the ability to camouflage themselves, some that live in trees or other foliage that adapt to look like a twig or thorn, enabling them to escape the notice of birds. The chameleon is probably the best known for camouflagers, and it owes the color changing abilities to the genetic expression of proteins. In these processes, gene encodes the condition of the external world. That's evolution, right? Question mark. Epigenetics suggests that we can signal our genes to rewrite our future. Our genes are as changeable as our brains. The latest the latest research in genetics show that different genes are activated in different times. They are always in flux and being influenced. There are experience dependent genes that are activated when there's growth, healing, or learning, and there are behavior state dependent genes that are influenced during stress, emotional arousal, or dreaming. Dreaming. Hmm. One of the most active areas of research today is epigenetics, literally above genetics. The study of how the environment controls genes activity. Epigenetics flies in the face of the conventional the conventional genetic model, which states that DNA controls all of life and all the gene expression that takes place inside the cell. This old understanding doomed us to a predictable future in which our destiny fell prey to our genetic inheritance, and all cellular life was predetermined like an automatic ghost in the machine. In fact, epigenetic changes in DNA expression can be passed on to future generations. But how do they get passed on if the DNA code stays the same? Well, a scientific explanation is beyond the scope of this book. We can use an analogy. Well, I want to say something. Let's pause real quick, okay? Because I'm the first ever in my entire family. Like, entire family's bloodline to be a vegetarian, to be a vegan, the first. And I knew that I didn't want to eat meat when I was like 10 years old. When I was very, very young, I did not like to see meat. That just wasn't me. I didn't want that. I don't want to eat it. But my genetics, my family, my whole family, my whole grandparents and their grandparents, they were eating meat. But it was something in my core, in my soul, that didn't feel right with that. So what I'm reading about it saying epigenetic changes in DNA expression can be passed on to future generations, but how do they get passed on if DNA codes stay the same? That's what made me think, because for me to be 10 years old and crying because my dad is frying chicken and I'm seeing blood in the chicken and I don't want to eat it, like I was forced to eat meat and forced to eat eggs and stuff like that. I did not want to eat it. It was one day where my dad told me to sit at the table and I couldn't get up until I finished my food because I was getting skinnier. I wasn't eating because I didn't like the environment, you know? Um, but let's read on. While a scientific explanation is beyond the scope of this book, we can use an analogy. Let's compare a genetic sequence to a blueprint. Imagine that you start with a blueprint for a house and scan it into your computer. Then, using Photoshop, you can alter its appearance on the screen, changing the number of characteristics without changing the blueprint. For example, you could change the expression of variables such as color, size, scale, dimension, material, and so on. Thousands of people representing environmental variables and can produce different images, but they would all be expression of the same blueprint. How long is this dang on chapter? Shoot, been reading for like an hour. Whatever. Oh my God, that's my brain. That's my brain. It doesn't it's you know how we try to like clear our mind and just focus on one thing and not think and just be in a flow state. It's like you get you get triggered. I'm not gonna let my brain try to beat me. I'm gonna finish this chapter. I said I was gonna do it, so I'm gonna do it. Epigenetics empowers us to think about change more profoundly. The epigenetic paradigm shift gives us free will to activate our own genes actively, or our own gene activity, and modify our genetic destiny. For the sake of example and simplification, when I talk about activating a gene by expressing it in different ways, I will refer to turning it on. In reality, genes don't turn on or off. They are activated by chemical signals and they express themselves in specific ways by making various protein. Just by changing our thoughts, feelings, emotions, and reactions and behaviors. For example, making healthier lifestyle choices with regard to nutrition and stress levels. We send our cells new signals and they express new proteins without changing the genetic blueprint. So while the DNA code stays the same, once a cell is activated in a new way by new information, the cell can create thousands of variations in the same gene. We can signal our genes to rewrite our future. On the game. On about watch. Watch. Perpetuating old states of being sets us up for an undesirable genetic destiny. Just as certain areas in the brain are hardwired, whereas other areas are more plastic, able to change by learning and experience. I believe genes are the same way. There are certain parts of our genetics that are more easily turned on, while other parts of our genetic sequences are somewhat more hardwired, which means they are harder to activate because they have been around longer in our genetic history. At least, that's what science says, right? How do we keep certain genes turned on and others turned off? If we stay in the same toxic state of anger, the same state of depression, the same vigilant state of anxiety, or the same low state of unworthiness. Those redundant chemical signals we have talked about keep pushing the same genetic buttons, which ultimately cause the activation of certain diseases. Stressful emotions, as you will learn, actually put the genetic trigger, dysregulating the cell. Dysregulation refers to impairment of the psychological regulatory mechanism and creating disease. When we think and feel the same way for most of our lives and memorize familiar states of being, our internal chemical state keeps activating the same genes, meaning that we keep making the same proteins. But the body cannot adapt to these repeating demands, and it begins to break down. If we do that for 10 to 20 years, the genetic begins to wear out, and they start making cheaper proteins. What I do means, sorry guys, I live with my mom and my little brother. Think about what happens when we age. Our skin sags because its collagen and elastin comes to be made of cheaper protein. Oh, damn. That's what happens? Think about what happens when we age. Our skin sags because its collagen and elastin comes to be made of cheaper proteins, which what happens to our muscles? They atrophy. Well, no surprise there. Actin and actin and myosin too are proteins. Here's an analogy. When the metal parts for your car is manufactured, it produces. Oh my God, he's throwing me off. Like, stop yelling. Like, I'm trying to read. Shit. Here's an analogy. When the metal part for your car is manufactured, it is produced in a die or mold. Each time that mold or die is used, it is subjected to certain forces, including heat and friction. When we begin to wear it down, as you might guess, the car parts are built to very close tolerances, referring to the permitted variation in a workpiece dimensions. Over time, the die or mold wears to the point that it produces a part that won't fit properly to the other part. This is similar to what happens to the body. As a result of stress or habit of being repeatedly or consistently angry, fearful, sad, and so on, the DNA that peptides use to produce the proteins will start to manufacture. What the fuck? Malfunction. When what is the genetic impact if we stay in a routine, familiar condition? Creating the same emotional reaction by doing the same things, thinking the same thoughts, seeing the same people, and memorizing our lives in a predictable pattern. We are now headed for an undesirable genetic destiny. We are locked into the same patterns and as generations before us, which confronted the same or similar situations. And if we are only reliving our emotional memories of the past, then we are headed for a predictable end. Our bodies will begin to create the same genetic conditions that the previous generation faced. Thus, the body will stay the same as long as we are feeling the same way, day in and day out. And if science tells us that it's the environment that signals the genes involved in evolution, what if our environment never changes? What if we've memorized the same conditions in our outer world and we living by the same thoughts, behaviors, and feelings? What if everything in our lives stay the same? You just learned that external environment chemically signals genes through the emotions of an experience. So if the experience in life aren't changing, the chemical signals going to your genes aren't changing. No new information from the outer world is reaching your cells. The quantum model asserts that we can signal the body emotionally and begin to alter the chain of genes event of a genetic event without first having any actual physical experience that correlates to the emotions. We don't need to win the race, the lottery, or the promotion before we experience the emotions of that event. Remember, we can create an emotion by thought alone. We can experience joy or gratitude ahead of the environment to such an extent that the body begins to believe that it's already in that event. As a result, we can signal our genes to make new proteins to change our body to be ahead of the present environment. Can elevated states of mind produce healthier expressions of genes? Here's an example of how we can signal genes in the new way we can begin to emotionally embrace an event in the future before it manifests. Here we go. In Japan, a study was conducted to find out what effects one state of mind has on disease. The subject were two groups of patients with type 2 diabetes, all of whom were dependent on insulin. Keep in mind that the most diabetic medicates Keep in mind that most diabetics medicate with insulin to remove sugar, glucose, out of the bloodstream and deposit it into the cells, where it can be used for energy. At the time of this study, the people involved were being treated with insulin pills or injections to help control their elevated blood sugar levels. Each group had their fasting blood sugar levels tested to establish a baseline. Next, one set of subjects watched a comedy show for an hour, while the control group watched a boring lecture. The test subjects then ate a delicious meal after that with their blood glucose levels were checked again. There was a significant discrepancy between the subject who enjoyed the comedy show and those who viewed it uneventful. On average, those who watched the lecture had their blood sugar levels rise 123 mg, high enough that they would need to take insulin to keep themselves out of the danger zone. In the joy, but in the joyful group, those who laughed for an hour, their after dining blood sugar values rose about half that amount, slightly outside the normal range. Initially, the researchers who performed the experiment thought that the light-hearted subjects had lowered their sugar levels by contracting their abdominal and diaphragmatic muscles when they laughed. They reasoned that when a muscle contracts, it uses energy, and circulating energy is glucose. But when the research went further, they examined that the gene sequence of the jovial individuals and discovered that these diabetics had altered 23 different gene expressions just by laughing at the comedy show they seen. Their elevated state of mind apparently triggered their brain to send new signals to their cells, which on those genetic variations that allowed their bodies to naturally begin to regulate the genes responsible for processing blood sugar. Our emotions can turn on some genes sequence and turn off others. This study clearly showed by signaling the body with a new emotion, the laughing subject altered their internal chemistry to change the expression of their genes. Sometimes my brain is telling me, hey, why don't you go watch some anime? You want to watch some anime? I know what you're trying to do. My brain is trying to make me stop, not follow through what I'm doing because it's not used to this programming. But we gonna get used to it. You need to listen, okay? This is me. This is mine. We are one, okay? We're not operating off of manipulating each other. Leave me alone. I'm gonna watch anime when I get done reading. Okay? Thank you very much. Sometimes a change in genetic expression can be sudden and dramatic. Have you ever heard of people after being subjected to extremely stressful conditions whose hair turned gray overnight? That's an example of genes at work. They've experienced such a strong emotional reaction that they altered their body chemistry, and they both turned on genes for an expression of gray hair and shut off the genetic expression for their normal hair color. Within a matter of hours, they signal a new genes in new ways by emotionally and thus chemically altering their internal environment. My brain just said, oh my God, another page. As I discussed in the last chapter, when you've experienced an event numerous times by mentally rehearsing events, every aspect in your mind, you feel what the event would feel like before it unfolds. Then, as you change the circuitry in your brain by thinking new ways, and you embrace the emotions of an event ahead of its physical manifestation, it's possible that you can change your body genetically. Can you pick a potential from the quantum field? Every potential already exists, by the way. Every potential. My phone just said it's on 10%. Let me make sure I get the charger so it doesn't go dead while I'm live. Okay. Hold on, y'all. Hold on, brain. Don't be trying. No, I don't want nothing to drink right now. See? Trying to talk to me. Leave me alone. We in the flow state. So let's be in the flow state. Don't be doing too much. Let's keep going. Where was I at? Oh, here we go. Can you pick a potential from the quantum field? Every potential already exists, by the way. And emotionally embrace the future event before the actual experience? Can you do this so many times that you emotionally condition the body to a new mind, thus signaling new genes in new ways? If you can, it is highly possible that you will begin to shape and mold your brain and body into a new expression so that they physically can change before the desired potential reality is made to manifest. Changing your body, why lift a finger? We may believe that we can change our brains by thinking, but what effect, if any, would this have on the body? Through the simple process of mentally rehearsing an activity, we can derive great benefits without lifting a finger. Here's an example of how this literally happened. As described in an article published in 1992, Journal of Neurophysiology, subjects were divided into three groups. The first group was asked to exercise by contracting and releasing one finger on their left hand for 5 weeks, for 5 1-hour training sessions per week for 4 weeks. A second group mentally rehearsed the same physical experience on the same table time without physically activating any muscle or fingers. People in a control group exercised neither finger nor their minds. At the end of the study, scientists compared the findings that the first set of the participants had their fingers stretched test against the control group. A no-brainer, right? The group who did the actual exercise exhibited 30% greater finger strength than those in the control group. We all know that if we repeatedly put on a load of muscle, we will increase the strength of the muscle. What we probably wouldn't anticipate is that the group who mentally rehearsed the exercise demonstrated 22% increase into the muscle strength. The mind then produced the quantifiable physical effect on the body. In other words, the body changed without having an actual physical experience. Just as researchers have worked with test subjects who mentally rehearsed finger exercises and others who imagined playing piano scales, experiments have compared practical environments versus mental rehearsals for individuals doing bicep curls. The results were the same. Whether the participants physically performed bicep curls or mentally rehearsed those activities, they all increased their bicep strength. The mental exercise, though, demonstrated physiological changes without ever having the physical experience. I remember my dad telling me something about this when I was a little girl. He would talk to me about how monks in temples, they would their bodies would be so fit, and they'll be able to like levitate and move without eating. They'll just be meditating all the time, and their bodies will get stronger, and like they go get powers and all type of stuff without just by not moving and meditating all day. And I was like, what? You lying, you know? But he wasn't. When the body has changed physically, biologically, to look like an exercise has happened just by thought or mental effort alone, then from a quantum perspective, this offers evidence that the event has already transpired in our reality. If the brain upgrades its hardwire to look like the experience physically occurred and the body is changed, genetically or biologically, it's showing evidence that it happened. And both are different with our doing anything in 3 dimensions. Then the event has occurred both in the quantum world of consciousness and in the world of physical reality. When you have thoughtfully rehearsed a future reality until your brain has physically changed to look like it has had the experience, and you have emotionally embraced a new intention, so many times your body is altered to react that it had the experience. Hang on, because this is the moment of the event. This is the moment the event finds you, and it will arrive in a way that you at least expected. That you least expected, which leaves no doubt that it came from your relationship to a greater consciousness, so that it inspires you to do it again and again. We finished. We had 222 likes. As soon as I look at it, we had 222 likes. We finished the chapter. Let's see how many pages we read today. Wait. Okay, so 53, and now we're on page 84. 53. I started on page 53, and I'm on page 84 now. Wow. I did it. I read the whole chapter. And that, my friends, that is what you call quantum healing. um, yeah. Just get a little ASMR real quick. We love you from Alaska. Oh my God, Alaska. Thanks for the read. I'm just literally, I'm glad I went live. Like, I am. I actually am glad I went live because this feels so good, you know, like for y'all to see. I'm messing with y'all. For y'all to see, you know, this side of me. Like, people people who are really putting in the work for themselves are putting in the work for themselves. And I guess this is just me showing y'all, you know, but I want to create more of this, you know. I want y'all to, I love this. I love just reading, you know, with y'all. And that's why I started it. We read 53, 84 minus 53 is 31. We read 31 pages today. I hope, you know, if somebody's just playing this while they're asleep, I hope you're having a good dream. But yeah, I feel good. I feel like I quantum leaped, you know, because when you focus on one thing, you give the universe room to create more with you and give you things that you didn't even think to ask for. So, yeah, I'm happy this made, you know, y'all calmed and y'all feel good. It actually made me feel good too. The sun is going down, my blue light is showing. We at 111. But yeah, I'm gonna get out of here. Little ASMR. I just wanted y'all to relax and calm down and just have some good vibes. Um, I'll see y'all on the next video or on the next live. Do y'all want me to read the next chapter with y'all? I might do it. I might just like start this thing where I'm reading books with y'all. You know, it'll keep me consistent. um, yeah, I love you guys. Thank you so much for sitting here with me, and I will see y'all on another video. Okay, thank you.